Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 208 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be discussing the 2-episode premiere of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, the new live action series from Lucasfilm that is currently coming out on Disney Plus. Very excited to talk about that show with my guest for this week, who is a returning guest to Who's the Bossk, and her name is Holly Frey. Holly, thank you so much for coming back on the show. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me. What an exciting week to come back when we have new, thrilling Star Wars to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this show. Having a good week, and it's just been all Skeleton Crew all the time, so I'm super excited about that. You might know Holly from the podcasts Full of Sith, which is of course a Star Wars podcast. There's also Criminalia and Stuff You Missed in History Class, which you can check out. But I want to ask you, Holly, about The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd on the History Channel.
Yeah. What would you like to ask about it?
How did that come about for you, and what does it entail? I have not had a chance to watch it yet, but I know you're involved.
Yeah, it came about because some of the folks working on it saw a TEDx that I did a while back about history, and they reached out and they were like, "Do you want to work on this show with us?" And I was like, "Okay, that's slightly terrifying, but they're really amazing to work with, and they make it really great." It is Dan Aykroyd's show because he loves weird history, and so I get to be one of those random talking heads they cut to that explain a little bit more and give some color commentary essentially on the topic at hand. I'm terrified at all points that I'm going to end up being the aliens guy, but
I was just
so good.
That was my next question. The Ancient Aliens meme guy, like you
Yeah.
could be the next one of those.
I don't want to be that, but yeah. So basically, I mean, we're in season 2 now. Season 2 just launched. I'm in season 2 a lot. It's a longer season, and so I actually have 2 more sessions to go up to New York and film next month. So basically, I go and I talk about history on camera for like 7 hours, and then they chop
Yeah,
all that up and they mix it throughout the season in different
nice.
episodes, and that's how it works.
So do they give you the topics beforehand and you have to do research and come in with that?
They do some research as well, and so I kind of get a packet of stuff and then I
Okay.
go through it. But I gotta like always look stuff up. I can't not. So I'm
Sure.
always going back through and like fact checking and just making sure I understand the shape of everything we're talking about. Because a lot of times they'll try to tailor it. There are a lot of different people like me on the show, and they kind of try to tailor your participation to subjects you have some expertise in. But sometimes there are ones where they're like, "Hey, we know this isn't really in your normal purview, but are you comfortable talking about it?"
Okay.
And I'll be like, yes or no. And if they do, I usually end up just doing a lot of research as I'm sometimes on the plane heading up. So
Okay. Yeah, I've always been fascinated by Dan Aykroyd's fascination with that kind of stuff. I mean, going back to like, I'm sure you're familiar with the movie Nothing But Trouble,
yeah.
and the Pennsylvania town Centralia, which is the town that was, that got abandoned because of the mine fires, and he based that whole movie on that little bit of
Yeah.
ephemera. Yeah.
Apparently, he gets it from his dad, who was also very interested in the paranormal and was a big
Okay.
inspiration for doing Ghostbusters in the first place.
Okay.
And that was kind of the foundational start of the show. And sometimes we branch off into less paranormally things and just odd things that have happened in history.
Yeah.
But it's super fun. It's an amazing team to work with, and I really, really always have a great time when I'm there.
Interesting. And this is on the History Channel, but can people find it streaming anywhere, or is it
I think
just
it's streaming on History
okay?
Online. It airs normally on Friday nights, but I know Brian was watching it online, my husband, the other day. So clearly it's streaming somewhere.
Okay. I'm gonna hunt for it and I will let you know what I think. I'm very interested in this. We are recording this live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you would like to comment or ask any questions, we'll be happy to address your concerns, such as this one from Sonia saying hi. Hello, Sonia. And then so says the leader. So says this says, happy holidays, you guys. Happy holidays right back at you. Let's get into the 5 Star Wars questions. Holly, this is your 3rd time on.
I know. How did that happen?
Well, once was in London as we were preparing
That's what it is. That's why I couldn't remember a second one,
for
because I was
Star
like,
Wars
I don't
Celebration.
remember sitting down once, but that was a little bit of a frantic and delightful time. So my
Yes,
memory did not keep it.
all kind of a blur, but that means you're up to level 3 of the 5 Star Wars questions. You ready
Terrifying.
for these?
Bring it on.
Okay, number 1 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 3. What is your favorite Star Wars book or comic book, and why?
This is the easiest thing on earth for me.
Okay.
It is DJ Older's Last Shot.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
the
Okay.
why of this is multi-layered. One, the audiobook for it is spectacular. My
Okay.
favorite of all of them. I listen to it like it's comfort listening, because
Is that Mark Thompson reading that, or
it's 3 different
okay.
narrators, because it happens in 3 different time frames. And Daniel, DJ, is one of the narrators, and he's spectacular. That I just love the conceit of it, like the way it's set up, because it makes it a lot easier to track the timeline.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because I do a lot of audiobooks, I'll have that moment of like, oh wait, was I turning left and paying attention to traffic when we found out that we time shifted? But this way you always have a key and it's easy. But what I love about it, aside from the fact that it's very Han Solo and Lando
Yeah.
oriented, is that um, you know, DJ Older used to be, I'm gonna get this wrong, a first responder or a paramedic.
Yes, I think he was an
Anyway,
EMT. Yeah.
right. I always get paramedic and EMT backwards, and I know I'm probably offending somebody by doing that, so apologies. But
Okay.
um that shows in this book there's a lot of body horror. It's very Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in some
Uh-huh.
regards, which is very much in my wheelhouse anyway. And it just examines the idea of identity and self in some ways through that body horror that I just find super fascinating, and I love it. That's a big part of it. And also you get to see what it's like when Han Solo accidentally takes drugs. So it's like a winner all around. There's nobody loses. It's all good.
I have to admit to you, I bought and read Last Shot before I was really covering Star Wars full time as a reporter, um, and I struggled with it. I think because Daniel Jose Older's writing style is more contemporary than I was used to in Star
Mhm.
Wars writing. Would you agree with that? Um, and I've definitely gotten, I mean, he's written so much Star Wars since then, and I've definitely gotten used to his style over that time, but I was like, wow, this is very different from what I'm used to. He
Yeah.
was like using some modern slang that in the prose that I was not prepared for. I think if I went back and read it now, I think I would like it more.
Yeah, there's a great moment that will stick in my head for the rest of my life, particularly in the audiobook, when there's like a thing going on and Han Solo kind of gets trapped in a scenario, that he thinks he's too good for. And one of the other characters just goes, "You got, sailor." And I was driving and I thought I was going to have to pull over. It was so funny. The delivery is so funny, but it
Yeah.
is that kind of modern vernacular, but in Star
Yes.
Wars. And it still feels very perfect in the moment, though. And brilliant. I love it.
That was one of the examples, and then another one I remember was in the narration prose, he used the phrase "clapped back," which I
Yeah.
was familiar with, but I was like, "Is that Star Warsy?" I don't know. Patrick Radiker. I'm gonna ask you next week how to best pronounce your name, Patrick, but he's gonna be next week's guest, and he says, "Hello, Mike and Holly." Hey,
Hi,
Patrick.
Patrick.
Okay, number 2, if you could own a life-size working replica of any Star Wars vehicle, what would you choose?
Vehicles is very hard for me because I'm not a ship person.
Okay.
Like, they're
Well, you could choose a
cool.
land vehicle if you like, or a
Well,
speeder bike or something, yeah.
I mean, I want all the bars is really what I want. Like, you
Oh,
could
right.
keep you could keep your vehicles. I want to barnacle up in a really good bar and just stay there
Okay.
forever. That being said, if I really could have any vehicle, I mean, it's got to be the Halcyon, right?
Oh yeah.
That way I get Sublight Lounge with the deal.
Right, that includes a bar. Is that the only vehicle that includes a bar? Probably not, but there's probably others we could think of. But that is a very, very good choice. The Halcyon, the Galactic Star Cruiser itself. Number three, do you have a favorite non-human sentient Star Wars alien species? So we're not talking about the creatures here, like a womp rat
We
or a
all know the
bantha.
answer to this, right?
Yeah. What do you think?
It's
Mon Calamari? Oh
Rhodians.
yeah, that's right. I forgot you're a big, big Rhodian person.
It's
Yeah.
Rhodians. I love Moncows too. They are
Yeah.
Moncows might be number 3. It goes
Okay.
Rhodian, Shadrafan, Moncow.
Oh, Chadrashan, that's a good one. Yeah. You must be loving the Rhodian representation in Skeleton Crew so far.
Yes, the second we saw those two little like Rhodian schoolgirls with their backpacks and their skirts, I was like, this is the best. This is the absolute. I'm here. There's so many cute sentient species in that show that I'm in
What's
love.
I don't want to get too far into Skeleton Crew just yet, but do you know I was trying to figure out the name of the species of the girl that Neil has a crush on. Is that
Oh,
species
Runa,
named?
I don't know if we know that one yet. I haven't hunted it down. I
Okay.
bet it has a name. We maybe just don't know it yet.
Yeah, I couldn't find it anywhere. Number four, what is your favorite piece of Star Wars music and why?
Oh, it's gonna be something that's like a diegetic piece
Okay.
because I love all the diegetic
Like
music.
in-universe music, yeah.
Yes, and that's the only thing we play. I'm sitting here in my little home cantina. Those are the
Yeah,
only tunes allowed in here are
right.
things that are in universe.
You must love all those playlists that came out after like
Oh,
Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and you got
yes.
all that new music.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
on heavy rotation in here.
nice.
Um, I was thinking about this earlier, and it's a real struggle because there are some really good ones, some of which are probably obscure enough that people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like
Okay.
there is a song in Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, the ILM immersive project called
Yeah.
Cyanarch, and it's just
Okay.
one of those weird songs that when it comes up, I feel instantly like I'm inside Star Wars.
Does that play in Cecil Slack's Cantina in that game?
Yes, it's on the
Okay.
jukebox. And then there's another one that is similarly a little bit obscure if people are not super into Star Cruiser called Far From Home by a band called Rebel Base that played in the cantina there in the lounge.
Yeah.
And I always just call it the bee song because it sounds like they're buzzing the lyrics. And so we have our own lyrics we've made up about how it's about a colony of bees. And I
Nice.
just love it. It makes me happy all the time.
That's great.
Plus
Wonderful.
anything Gaia sings.
Oh yes, gotta love Gaia, and wonderful choices there. Number five, the fifth and final of the five Star Wars questions, level three. This is a good one. If you could go back in time and be present for the filming of any Star Wars live action scene, which would it be?
This is so hard because on the one hand, I of course want to be there for Greedo.
Yeah.
But that becomes tricky because it's two different scenarios, right? It's the
Yes.
London soundstage and the stuff that was shot in California. So then I would have to pick. So that becomes very, very difficult. So then I feel like I kind of have to maybe figure it out by location. Like, is there a location I would want to go to for
Mhm.
filming? I don't do great with ice.
Okay.
However, I did just get to go to shooting locations in Iceland for Rogue One,
Okay.
which was amazing. But I wasn't there for the filming of it. And that's sort of too new. So I think what I'm going to go with is the cantina scene as it was shot on the I want the exteriors on Tunisia because I want to run around all this stuff.
Okay.
That's all I need. That's all I
And the
need.
closest you can really get right now, I mean, you could either go to Tunisia or you could play Star Wars Outlaws, where they've kind of recreated that. Have you checked
Yes.
that out yet? Have you played that
Yes,
game?
but I have not. I'm a little slow on it. One, because I'm not as fast at video games as I used to be. I feel
Okay.
like an
Same
old
here.
now. I'm like, how do you what is going on? I've turned into that person. I don't love it. But also I just haven't had a ton of time. So I'm kind of ramping up and I have not gotten to Tatooine yet. So
Okay.
I'm just
That's
gonna
fair.
stop once I'm there. I won't even finish the rest of the
Right.
game.
Just
I'm just
hang
gonna be
out
like, cool, I'm home.
in
Great.
Mos Eisley. Yeah. It's pretty cool just to kind of exist there in the Star Wars galaxy. Okay, that's the end of Star Wars questions for this week. Let's talk about some Star Wars headlines coming out of Galaxy Far, Far Away in the past couple weeks. The Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, which was released on Disney Plus a few years ago. It's an animated special, but now you can watch it on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel for free
Yeah.
for a limited time. Did you watch this back then? Are you a fan of this special?
Yes. I love all the Lego specials. They're so funny. And the writing has just gotten so witty in them that I really love them. It does freak me out a little because I don't like when Life Day and Christmas get conflated. I'm very anal retentive about that. But I have to give it grace. Listen, we got Yo Blasto out of it, so I'm happy.
We'll take any Life Day we can get, I
Yes.
think, right? So yeah, check that out on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel right now for a limited time for free. Listened to and reviewed the new audio drama Star Wars: The High Republic Tempest Breaker, written by Cavan Scott and performed by a full cast of actors. Really enjoyed this. It's all about the character of Lorna D. Yes, Lorna D. Thank you. Dee. And it follows up on Tempest Runner, which was the first audio drama to come out from the High Republic. It's kind of her redemption arc, I would call it, in this story. Really enjoyed that, as I have with all these audio dramas that they've been putting out. How about this, Holly? Have you checked it out? Are you looking forward to it, or
I am
what?
very much looking forward to it. I haven't listened to it yet because I'm still working on listening to the new Mace Windu book.
Okay.
But I'm into it, and I love Lorna D as a character. She's really interesting. I
Yes.
struggle a little with the High Republic, not for not loving it, but just keeping up with it. There is so much stuff
Yes.
that I'm always like, should I slot this in sooner? It's not really in the line of things that I have gotten to,
Yeah.
but I want to hear it, so it's going to come earlier than it would have if I went through things in their production release order.
Right. Even with phase 3 of the High Republic, they've been spacing it out a little bit more, but it's
Yeah.
still coming fast and furious.
Every time I
And
think, oh, I'm making gains, then there's like, oh
yes,
no, you forgot that other thing came out. Sorry.
yes. Speaking of which, recent comic books coming out from Star Wars have been the Battle of Jakku macro series has been continuing with the second mini series called Republic Under Siege. And then in the world of the High Republic, we've got two mini series from Dark Horse Comics. The Battle of Jakku is Marvel Comics. High Republic Adventures is Dark Horse Comics, and they've got dispatches from the Occlusion Zone and Echoes of Fear. I'm in the middle of all of these right now, and I'm enjoying all of them. Holly, how have you been keeping up with any of the comics lately?
I
Or
get a D- on comics
okay,
keep up because what happens is I always think like, oh, I'm going to read this new thing.
yeah,
And then I find myself reading something I've already read, like as a, I don't think I can ramp up to new information yet.
yeah,
So like I've read the Halcyon comic like a cajillion times because
right.
I want to live in a world where I could potentially have someone pay for me to live on the ship forever. But also I just can't keep up.
Did you? I got to interview Ethan Sachs, who wrote that Galactic Star Cruiser
Yeah,
Halcyon
yeah.
Legacy comic book, and he told me he had never stepped foot on the Halcyon, and I just found that so crazy. Like you would that Lucasfilm Publishing and Marvel and Disney would hire people to write about this experience and then never like send them there to do it.
I feel like that's the case in a number of instances, right? Beth
Yeah.
Revis, who wrote the Han and
Yes.
Leia book, had never been on the ship, and
Correct.
their honeymoon happens there, and she talks
Yep.
about the ship a good bit in that book. Similarly, when the summer holiday Lego special came out, those guys
Right.
were like, "No, we never went to the Halcyon," and I was like, "What? What?" I would think this is just a magic wand that you get to walk on and explore
Yeah.
every corner, but no.
Yeah. I found that odd, but I guess it was prohibitively expensive for some people. I guess I don't know if Disney couldn't afford to send their own author. These are contractors coming in; they don't really work for the company, so I guess maybe
Yeah.
it was outside of those guidelines. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about lightsabers. There are new legacy lightsaber hilts available on the Disney Store. You can also get these at Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. For Darth Sidious, aka Emperor Palpatine, and Gungi, the Wookiee Padawan youngling, they're now available online at the Disney Store. Do you collect these lightsabers in addition to
My
your?
beloved does.
Okay.
So we have, is it Gungi or Gunji?
Oh, maybe it's Gunji. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong.
I honestly can't remember with any kind of confidence. We've been saying Gunji, but I don't know. But we have that one.
Okay.
We grabbed it on Life Day because we flew down for Life Day.
Yes, I saw your Instagram posts. I don't collect the lightsabers that much. Every once in a while, I'll find, like, I got the High Republic Stellan Gios one because I feel so close to the High Republic. So every once in a while, there'll be one that I really want. I want to get the Ki-Adi-Mundi Legacy lightsaber because it comes in the Doc Ondar Den of Antiquity box. Yeah. Have you seen that? The box is really what I want, but they won't sell it to me separately, sadly. Hasbro has been doing these weekly Gift the Galaxy announcements for the holiday season. Every Tuesday, they've been announcing new action figures from the Star Wars galaxy. We've got this week's release was Kelnaka. They released new images of that Black Series action figure, which was first announced back at San Diego Comic-Con this year. So there's new images of Kelnaka. And then last week, there was a new Obi-Wan Kenobi and 212th Battalion Clone Trooper 2-pack for the Black Series. Same question, but with action figures. Do you keep up with these? Do you buy these?
Oh, yeah. We just pre-ordered Kelnaka today, like right before I came in here. We haven't pre-ordered Obi-Wan. We'll have a discussion about it. The problem is that there are a lot of Obi-Wans and a lot of troopers. And like our house is quickly going to be inhabited by a ghost. Meaning the ghost from Rebels.
The HasLab.
So we're having a little moment of, and we got in on the cantina. So we're having that discussion of like, okay, but for real, where's it all gonna go? It's a lot. We have a lot. I mean, Brian and I both have a lot of stuff from when we were kids and all the way up through now. Like the collection is large. So I keep joking that we need to win the lottery so we can buy the house next door and just put Star Wars things in it.
Yeah, like Steve Sansweet, you need a big barn to keep.
Yeah, a little bit. We're getting there. So
yeah, but I probably will also get that Kelnaka as well because I have the other Acolyte Black Series figures, so I want to kind of complete that collection. Let's see. Turning to music before we talk about the show Galaxy. Sorry, before we talk about the Skeleton Crew as a series, I want to talk about the music really quickly because Lucasfilm did release one musical track by Mick Giacchino, who is writing the score for Skeleton Crew. It's called The Kids Suite. And then you pointed out to me right before we started recording here that they have also now released the Bunky Dunko version, the Huttese version of Major Tom, the 80s pop hit that was turned into Huttese for one of the Skeleton Crew trailers. So you can go and listen to those now wherever you hear your music, wherever you stream music. I think it's on YouTube as well. What do you think of the music so far in this series and the ones we've gotten to listen to kind of isolated from the show?
Yeah, so I have really, really loved the score, particularly in episode 2, where there are so many like subtle references to Pirates of the Caribbean. I am very obsessed with Bunky Dunko. This is like so my jam. One, like Major Tom came out when I was a teenager. It's very much in my like core musical memory wheelhouse. 2, I don't know if you've paid attention, but it's not a direct translation. It's about Atten.
Right. Yes.
And they have in the video that they released with the track today, they have kind of graphical lyrics on it. So if you look at YouTube, you can see what all the Huttese words are. I imagine that will keep some of us very busy while we do translations.
Wow. So I'm going to wait for Star Wars Explained on that one, probably.
You could do your Star Wars karaoke now. You're ready.
I love it. Yeah, when that came out, I was jamming out to Bunky Dunko, and I'm glad to have it. Now I can listen to it on my drive, where when I'm going down to Disneyland and stuff. Let's get into the main topic for this week's episode of Who's the Boss, and that is the first two episodes of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which are now
Yes.
available to stream exclusively on Disney Plus. They released them a day early. It was supposed to come out yesterday at 6
Mm.
p.m. Instead, they put them out Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time and then 9 p.m. East Coast time. Let's see. Where do we want to start here? I want to mention that I was on Skywalking Through Neverland, which you have also appeared on, Holly. I know
Yeah.
this week's episode, I'll be on that show talking about all of my thoughts leading up to, and then including talking about these episodes, the first two episodes of Skeleton Crew. So you can listen to my opinion, and we go through some of the Easter eggs, and we hear about Richard and Sarah's opinion there as well. So I'm gonna, for this episode of Who's the Boss, I want to focus on your thoughts by and large, Holly. What were your hopes and expectations going into Star Wars Skeleton Crew, like from the time that it got announced up until right before you saw these episodes?
Um, in terms of hopes and expectations, I was really excited for there to be something from fresh angle, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of childhood experience in the Star Wars universe. Like we see
Yes.
kids on occasion, we've seen younglings. Obviously, we've seen Anakin, but he's like an outlier in terms of like what a childhood is. Um so I was really excited at the idea of like, oh, this will be a completely fresh point of view. And I always have a little trepidation because I'm a monster. Let's establish that up front. I often get a
Like a
little
Lady Gaga fan? Is that what?
no, like a bad person.
Okay.
I mean, Lady Gaga is awesome, but I mean it in the context of not a good human. But
Okay.
I can get a little bit cringy about child actors, right? Like
Yes.
often you see like the ways in which they have been raised or directed or whatever to be very like ta-da, I'm a performer, which I am not putting on the kids, by the way, at all. That's like the
Right.
product of the adults around them. So I was a little worried. I was like, oh gosh, what a whole show of kids. Is this going to be Stand By Me level amazing, or is this going to be, like a less amazing show? And in fact, all of the kids are spectacular. Like the
Yes.
directing and the acting for them is so good that I need not have worried. Of course, I, like everyone else, became obsessed with Neil the second I saw him. And so I was like, please don't let Neil be like weirdly annoying or anything. And in fact, he's delightful. So all my dreams have come true. I'm very, very happy. Neil in a bubble bath right after they showed me a piece of the Life Day special. Like I screeched so loud. I think dogs in the neighborhood are still going like, what happened? I don't understand.
Neil in a bubble bath, in fact, is the thumbnail image for this very stream right now. So if you're watching, you have already clicked on that. Yeah, same as you. I had my trepidations, I think, but I was super excited, especially knowing about the kind of 80s kids movie homage that they were going for. I I was a child of the 80s. I was born in late 1979, so I grew up on this genre of film, especially, The Goonies. I keep going back to it. People keep telling me they don't like it. I don't believe them. I just
You?
like, yeah, I just Richard at Skywalking Through Neverland just told me he
Richard.
watched it recently and didn't care for it. But I think if you didn't really grow up on it, maybe it's not going to click for you. But you mentioned Stand By Me, which I think is another good example. And there are some other, like I know Matt Martin posted today about the movie Explorers by Joe Dante, which is
Yeah.
another from that period. Were you into those kind of movies at that time in the 80s?
Hmm? I am a little bit older than you. So when those movies were coming out, I was the age of those kids.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting, that idea of seeing, sort of my age inserts in thrilling and sometimes
Yes.
dangerous
Yes.
experiences. Yeah,
That's
I
what I
loved
always
all of
said
them.
I loved about those movies, especially as I got older. I was like, because I remember when movies like Spy Kids were coming out in the early 2000s, and I never really felt like those kids were in any real danger. And I was comparing it to the kids adventure movies that were coming out when I was growing up, and how, in the Goonies, they're being chased by mobsters and shot at, and
Right.
there's all sorts of real peril for them. They don't feel protected in that
Yeah,
way.
I mean, even right when you think about ET, now of course the guns have been removed from it digitally, but like ET was scary when it came out because
Yes.
I remember that sensation of just like watching it and being like, these kids cannot trust adults, which is a very scary revelation for a kid to have.
Yeah.
Um, and that made that experience of watching it really really emotional for me. And then I got the novel, and I think I read the ET novel like 30,000 times from the age of like 11 until I was probably 18. I love that book.
Yeah, and I will say Steven Spielberg has gone back and decided that the original version of ET is the canonical, that's the one that is released now
Right.
on the 4K disc. So he's kind of abandoned and disowned the 2002 special edition where they swapped out the walkie-talkies for guns,
Yeah.
and there was a CGI ET in there too. But
Listen,
go ahead.
here's the thing. I will not judge his decision to do that because I understand how, as a parent, to then watch kids be in peril is painful and difficult, and he wanted to not
Right.
do that. Like, I get it. I don't love
Sure.
it as much, but I understand it. I was never one of those like, damn you, Steven Spielberg. I'm like, all right.
I
That's where
guess
your
I
head's at.
was. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about these two episodes of Skeleton Crew, which finally were released on Monday evening. What were your initial reactions to finally getting to see the show?
I mean, I don't think I stopped grinning for an hour and a half, right? Like, there is so much fun and delight, and it's interesting because one of the, kind of poisons of Star Wars fandom is that I think people forget that they were kids when they saw them initially. And
Yeah,
so when they're like, new Star Wars isn't like old Star Wars, it's like, no, you're not like the child that you used to be, which is fine. But like,
right.
you're not going to have that same sense of wonder. And in a magical way, this particular series kind of recaptures that feeling of being a
Yes.
kid and watching it, which is like the best magic trick ever pulled, I think.
Yeah, I always find myself pointing out to people, like, it came up with Saturday Night Live recently because that's celebrating its 50th anniversary, but everybody's favorite cast or period of Saturday Night Live is when they were 12 years old,
Uh-huh.
and it's kind of the same thing with Star Wars. Like, whatever existed when you were a kid,
Yes,
that's
is
the one
beloved.
that you were attached to. And it's going to be this, in 15, 20 years, we're going to have adults that loved the sequel trilogy and the Disney
Yep.
Plus era of Star Wars more than anything else, and the older movies will feel dated to them. But you get this kind of perspective as time goes on, like, okay, I mean, this is my Star Wars, and other people have their Star Wars, and it all kind of works together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love your point of this kind of being a nostalgic look back at what Star Wars feels like to kids. And yeah, these kids going on this adventure in the show are sort of the audience surrogate, exploring the Star Wars, experiencing the Star Wars galaxy for the first time, because they live on this sequestered
Yeah.
I keep using this word cloistered, which I just love that word for some reason, planet called Atten. Let's get into that now.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
it's a good jumping off point,
Get
because
ready. I have
this is
thoughts.
exactly, yeah, this is the starting point. It's kind of the Tatooine of the show, because the kids find it boring, but it looks cool to us because it's like future suburbia,
Mm.
basically. Um, and when the trailers for the Skeleton Crew came out, I know a lot of fans were questioning whether suburbia had a place in Star Wars. But it turns out, and this is one of the surprising things to me about the show that I wasn't expecting, it turns out that there is kind of a reason why this planet looks different from anything else that we've seen
Right.
in Star Wars. So what are your thoughts on At Atten? And I don't know, based on these two episodes, why do you think it is so separated from everything else that we know in the galaxy.
Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying if I'm right, it might be a huge spoiler.
Okay.
This is just my theory, but of course
I'm curious if you have the same theory that I do, because I have a big
probably.
theory about
Here's
this
the
too.
thing, right?
Okay.
Everything we have heard about it from outsiders is that it is this planet full of treasure.
Yeah.
In terms of what we have seen going on the planet itself, like, what is the only subject those kids seem to be studying in school?
Yeah. Money.
Math.
Math and money, and yeah.
When you're talking about things of value and math only, I'm like, okay, that's a bank. Like, it's some sort of it's the Fort Knox of Star Wars, perhaps. Like, we never saw anybody like worried their essay wasn't going to get written in time. It was literally all like math and statistics and
Right.
figures. All of the parents are like worried about their like audits and whatnot. Like, I'm like, oh, this I think this might be a repository.
Okay. I like that a lot. Yeah. No, I hadn't thought of it as in those terms, I think. The big thing that stuck out to me is, and we talked about this on Skywalking Through Neverland, kind of the use of the phrase great work,
Mm-hmm.
which ties into the High Republic, and the Chancellor at that period, in that period of the Star Wars galaxy, is named Lina So, and she enacts all these great works across the galaxy. One of them is a big space station in the Outer Rim where the Jedi and the Republic can kind of bring a little bit of, peace and justice to the Outer Rim.
That
And then
doesn't
there's
go so well.
no, it doesn't. And then there's also a Republic Fair was another great work,
Yeah.
and that also did not go well. But the use of great work kind of had me raising my eyebrow a little bit. And then today I was reading one of the newer High Republic comics, and they were talking about this planet that gets brought up all the time in the High Republic, which is the origin of the nameless creatures. It's called Planet X in the High Republic. And I was like, is there some connection? Because they always talk about Planet X being covered by this veil and kind of tucked away from the rest of the galaxy. So now this is my way out there theory that at the end of the High Republic, Chancellor Lina So is going to like send a group of people out there to settle Planet X, and that's going to become At-Atten. I don't know. That's just my way out there. No chance in a million that it's going to be true theory, but we'll see. Yeah. The first episode of Skeleton Crew is called This Could Be a Real Adventure. It was directed by John Watts, who we know from the recent Spider-Man trilogy from Marvel Studios. Created and written by Christopher Ford with John Watts. They co-wrote Spider-Man Homecoming together. Executive producers were Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who we know from The Mandalorian and the other Mandoverse series coming out on Disney Plus, like Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett. Cinematographer was Sean Porter, who did the Green Book movie. Yeah. The editor was Andrew S. Eisen from The Imitation Game. And I did want to point out that the visual effects supervisor is ILM's own John Knoll, who is also the co-creator of Photoshop, very interestingly.
Bless you, John Knoll.
Let's see. Episode 2, I just go through it, I guess, while we're on it. Episode 2 is titled Way, Way Out Past the Barrier. It was directed by David Lowery, who did A Ghost Story. He also did, for Disney, the Pete's Dragon remake and Peter Pan and Wendy on Disney Plus. Written by Christopher Ford and John Watts again. The cinematographer was Sean Porter again. And then the editor was Terrell Gibson from the movie Sorry to Bother You. Let's get into another location. This is from episode 2, Way, Way Out Past the Barrier, Port Borgo. So this is kind of the polar opposite of At-Atten, because At-Atten is the very safe, serene suburbia, and Port Borgo feels like Star Wars. It feels like the underworld of Star Wars, the out of control criminal element of Star Wars. And it brought to mind the real life Port Royal to me, which is where pirates would hang out in the 17th century. What did you think of this location as a location in Star Wars?
What an incredibly fun visual treat is my
Yeah.
first thing always, right? Like I'm very visually oriented, so I'm like, if you keep my eyeballs busy, I'm going to be pretty happy. And it was like every corner you look around is something delightful and to, entice your imagination into thinking about why it's there and what it is and how it is and isn't familiar. I mean, listen, I love that those kids belly up to a noodle bar and like don't know what they're doing. Like to me that whole thing was hilarious. I'm like, this
Yes.
is yes, give me yes.
I had
um
to look up the name of the voice actor who played um the bartender, not the bartender, the fry cook is what he's credited as at that noodle bar. And I don't know if you watch What We Do in the Shadows.
um Religiously.
Okay, he's the neighbor, Sean on
Yeah,
What We Do
yeah.
in the Shadow. Is
Shawnee.
yeah, Anthony Adam. I don't know how to say his last name. Adamaniuk is the voice of that fry cook. I just thought he
Yeah.
was such a hilarious performance. Go ahead, continue.
No, I mean, that's all great. They tantalized me with a bar that we couldn't go into, which was just mean. Um, I love so much the character who's like, "Are you children?" And she seems to
Yes,
legitimately be trying to help them. Um, I love everything about that. Like just the way that area is set up and the fact that the kids are like, "Oh my gosh," like Neil says something like, "Look at these aliens." And I'm like, "Your whole planet is aliens, my brother." I love everything about all of that. I really really like that there is a droid that does tattoos that is also very
yes,
tattooed. I'm like, this is like being in
yes,
a real tattoo parlor. Hilarious doing his hut syndicate tattoo that
yes.
goes awry. I'm like, how is he going to fix that with like a big flower, a Jogan fruit over the messed up line? We'll see. Um, I really, really want. I hope we get to like spend more time on that in that location
Right.
because there's too much stuff to not go back and look
Yes.
around some more. I'm hoping. Here's my hope as I watched all of that. Please, 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 universe, please, sweet baby Greedo, let this be somewhere we fly through on Star Tours, please.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Like, oh, I want to dock there in Star Tours and get all confused and scared.
I hadn't thought about that before, but I hope we get at least a one location from Skeleton Crew in Star Wars because they've done Ahsoka now, um, but they haven't. I mean, it would be great to get anything else from the Disney Plus era in Star Tours. So that would be wonderful to see. I just think it's great and interesting that they chose this location to be the first place that these kids visit after they leave their very safe home on at Atten, and they get to experience like the worst place they could possibly go as children. And yeah, that character that tries to protect them or at least get them out of there is named Melna, and she's portrayed by Paloma Garcia Lee. I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Um, so that's an interesting character who pops up there. I do want to go through the rest of the cast really quickly. The main four kids are Wim, portrayed by Ravi Cabot Conyers, Fern, portrayed by Ryan Kiera Armstrong. KB is the cyborg girl with the visor, and her actress is Kriana Crotter, who has been on this podcast before earlier this summer. Before we really knew that much about Skeleton Crew, she was here chatting with me about it. Neil is played by Robert Timothy Smith, who I got to meet a couple days ago. He's super, super nice.
Nice.
Wendell is the kid's dad, and he's played by the actor Tunde Adebimpe. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that somewhat correctly. Farah is the mother of Fern. She's played by Carrie Condon, who I knew from Better Call Saul.
Mhm.
Brutus is voiced by Fred Tatasciore, and he's done a ton of voices for Disney and all over the place. Gunter is played by Jaleel White. He's another one of the pirates. Jaleel White, of course, you know him as Steve Urkel from Family Matters. Very fun that he's popped up in this role. Vane is a character that carried over from The Mandalorian,
Yep.
played by Marty Matulis. And then I think this is going to be a standout character besides Neil, who is everybody's favorite. SM-33, the
Yeah.
pirate droid, voiced by Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead and all those Simon Pegg Cornetto trilogy movies. wonderful performance in the voice, and then also wonderful puppeteering. This is a practical puppet on set by and large, kind of accentuated with CGI as they do with Neil as well. But I'm loving this character of SM33. And then let's see, Jadna Nawad. He's the Jude Law character who doesn't show up until, well, we don't see his face until the end of episode 2. At the beginning of episode 1, I was thinking that pirate captain is going to turn out to have been Jude Law as
100%.
well. And his name is Captain Silvo there. So maybe he has some aliases that he's going by here. Any of these characters or actors that stood out to you that you would like to talk about?
Oh, all of them. Can I just tell you, first of all, I love that KB is essentially Low Baby, right?
Yes.
She's like Lobot in little form, and I love everything about it. I just think it's cool. I didn't know how I felt about the visor when I saw the previews, but now that I know that she's Low Baby, I'm all into it. I really like 33. I love the moment in episode 2, right before he gets shot, when he and Fern are having the discussion of like, why did you bring us here? This is where pirates go. We are not pirates. And she says, we're children. And as he gets shot, he is saying, can children not be pirates? And I'm just like, oh, that's a good question. I
also love how quickly he turns around, like after Fern convinces him that she is the new captain, like how quickly he is willing to help them, like show them how to pilot the ship. I just thought that was very funny.
I love that Fern is a Spitfire. Like, I was not ready for how badass she is. Like, just the fact that she will completely command every situation. The detail, I had mentioned it on Blue Sky, but the detail that her jacket is her school jacket turned inside out is so cute.
I did not pick up on that, but that's a cool detail. Yeah,
it is. And it's one of those things where, like, then you realize, because I'm always looking at costumes, so then you realize her jacket is a little big, and I'm like, I wonder what that discussion was where she asked for an oversized school uniform. And then she turns it inside out and she has patches, but she flips it to get home and be okay and doesn't have to be trundling around in extra outfit, which is brilliant. I like that she wears her required school uniform skirt over pants, over her explorer pants. It's very Amelia Earhart. I love everything about it. Her whole look is a little bit Amelia Earhart throwback, which is an interesting visual choice. Wim is the cutest kid on earth, and I don't know that I would love to spend time with him, because stop touching stuff, kid. You're so charming, but you gotta stop. That impulsivity would make me crazy.
That moment where he sees the button flashing and he's like deciding whether he's going to push it or not. I couldn't help but have you seen the movie Flight, the Robert Zemeckis movie Flight? There's that shot, it's a movie about an alcoholic who's an airplane pilot, but there's a movie with a shot of him. He's like, I don't even think Denzel Washington is on screen at this point. It's just a shot of like a mini bar with a bottle of alcohol on top of it. And it's like, is he going to drink this before he's got his big like deposition the next morning? Is he going to get drunk? And he's like, and there's this just pregnant pause as you wait for him to take that bottle. That's what that moment made me think of.
Yeah, the editing of that whole sequence is so good too, because you have that pregnant pause. He pushes it. It feels a little, weak in its execution.
Anticlimactic,
like, nothing's happening here. And then slowly everything goes completely haywire. And the way that's paced out is so smart. I really, really, I genuinely love everything about Neil and his whole kooky family. And I want more little baby Tulu. And I want the twins. And I want all of it.
I love how every time he brings up his family, he has to list all of them.
Yes.
Because he gets home and he says hi to all of them.
Jorgo, Jono, and little baby Tulu. I love everything about it. I love that they're like, I have been talking about it on social media nonstop. The what appears to be a pastiche of the St. Pauli girl and Samuel
Yes.
Adams Pure Patriot in their garage. I want that on clothes. I want it on my wall. I want it on everything. I think that's like the design apex for the whole show for me.
I did see that someone offered to make that for you, or cooperate with you on coming up with a way to make that. So I hope that happens for you.
We need it.
Yeah, I think if Wim is Mikey from the Goonies, then Fern is probably Mouth, and KB is Data, and Neil is almost definitely Chunk. But I also called Neil Millhouse on Skywalking Through Neverland. So
he is very Millhouse, but he's sweeter than Millhouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Millhouse is like a sad sack. You feel bad
Right.
for him. Somebody else compared him to Bobby Hill, which there's definitely some DNA in there. I think that's not off base. But he also he's so damn lovable. You know what I mean? Like there's just that kid has no malice in his body. I love that he has no savvy whatsoever. People ask him questions and he gives the exact correct, honest answer.
He's incapable of lying. That's what's great. Who do you have a crush on at school?
His dad gave it to him his lunch money. Like, ding dong, shut your mouth.
Yes, Neil Nation, as Patrick said in the comments here. Hashtag Neil Nation. Can't argue with that. Let's talk about Jod Nanawood, the character played by Jude Law, who might also be named Captain Silvo at this point. We've only seen him briefly show up, maybe at the beginning of episode 1, and then at the very end of episode 2, where it seems like he can use the Force to get that key to open up the brig cell there. What do you think, Holly? Does he actually have the Force? I'm guessing he's not actually a Jedi, but does he actually use the Force in that scene?
I don't know. My instinct is no, but maybe that's because I'm a jaded old bag. I don't know. If he does, it brings up some interesting ideas, right? We have seen in storytelling a little bit of the democratization of the Force, that there are lots of people that are Force sensitive, that are in no way connected to the Jedi Order, or in some cases don't want anything to do with it, which I like. I think it would be an interesting character choice if he, tanked out of the idea of being a Jedi, if at some point that was offered to him and he was like, no, or he maybe gave it a whirl and was bad at it, or realized he could use it for nefarious purposes, which is a pretty fun idea. Like the idea of a Force user, we have good and bad left and right. Like we have Sith and Jedi talk all the time, but we haven't had a lot of, oh no, I have the Force, I just use it to steal things.
Right. Well, how old would you say Jude Law is? He's probably, early 50s? I'm just guessing, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember.
If we rewind time, kind of, because Skeleton Crew takes place 6 or 7 years after Return of the Jedi, I believe,
right?
Kind of around the Mandoverse period, plus the 19 years between episodes 3 and 4, plus the 5 years of the Galactic Civil War. So how old would he have been, like, when Order 66 happened, when the Empire took over? Like young enough to have trained as a Jedi, potentially?
Maybe. I mean, we also never know how anybody ages anymore, right?
Right.
But I do like the idea that he kicked it to the curb rather than like there was any Order 66, or like it came up and it was just a hard pass from the gate. Like,
could be.
I know I can pickpocket. I'm fine. Thank you.
I'm sure we will get more information on that as we go along. I do want to touch on kind of something that you mentioned already, the look of the show. You were admiring Port Borgo and all the detail that went into that. So the production design was by Oliver Scholl, who did the movie Edge of Tomorrow, along with Doug Chiang, who we know as a Star Wars concept artist going all the way back to the prequel trilogy, and he's a big wig at Lucasfilm these days. What else? Do you have anything else you would comment on about the overall look of Skeleton Crew?
I mean, I'm obsessed with it. like I mentioned this on Full of Sith, but I really love that what we have seen of At-Aten has a mid-century modern vibe. It feels very much like what people in mid-century modern would dream of as the future.
Yeah.
Right, like in the 50s when they were doing
Right.
that. But one thing that I think is interesting is that it is not, when you're looking at those suburban interiors, they are cozier certainly, but in terms of design language, they're not that different from things we have actually seen before, right? Like if you look at um why is my brain going completely blank? At Edie's apartment in Rogue One, or not Rogue One, in
Yeah.
at Andor,
Andor. Yeah.
it very much vibes the same in terms of
Yeah.
like furniture, the way that like shelving units and built-ins are set up. It's a very similar look. So I know some people have been like, this looks completely different, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. It just looks cozier, right?
Yeah.
It's just a homier version of it because it's presumably, it's not a city in the way that
Or
Edie's
Asant.
home is.
Or yeah.
It's not as sparse maybe as some of the things going on there. It's meant to be full of families and kids. Just great.
Right. It's really funny that you mentioned that apartment from Andor, because when Wim eats his cereal in the morning, all I could think of was Cyril Karn also eating cereal with blue milk.
Can we talk
Like,
about that? That milk looks gross as hell, though. Like that Wim is using. I'm like, that is some Dagobah swamp water milk. That's not. Mm. There's a drink I make here sometimes, just called an Ortolan cream, and it's a variation on a White Russian, and I use blue coconut milk. But when you mix that with Kahlua, it turns that color, and I'm just like, I know this isn't appealing to look at, but I promise it's very tasty. And that's all I could think is like, whoa, that's not a cute. Is
yeah.
it fortified with extra greens for children? Is this a vitamin situation? Don't do
Um,
that.
I also want to point out another thing that Wim and Cyril Karn have in common is action figures. In Andor, there's a shot where you can see on Cyril's shelf, he has like I don't know if they're like Imperial Stormtrooper action figures or whatever. They're kind of blurry in the background, but Wim we also see playing with a Sith and a Jedi, like kind of makeshift, almost kind of Toydarian toy maker
Yeah.
style action figures. I like that detail as well. Patrick had a good comment here. He found it interesting how Wim's dad seems to be swamped and struggling to keep up, but their home is huge. The planet has some sort of secret to it. I think that's
Or
definitely the
his dad
case.
is just not that good at math. We don't know.
My wife Tori watched the show with me for the first time last night, and I had seen it. I think I had seen the episodes 4 times previous to that, but all she kept saying was, "This guy's such a bad father." I don't know. It reminded me of my mom, because my mom was a single mom when I was growing up, and she
Yeah.
just had to work all the time to support us. So like,
Yeah.
I definitely empathized with Wendell, in that, he was a little too busy to be there for his son.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad guy at all. I just think he's overwhelmed. He has too much on
Yes.
his plate. And he, unfortunately, I mean, that happens to all of us at
Yes.
various points in time, where the people that you want to take care of the most and that you love the most, like their immediate day-to-day needs can sometimes
Yeah.
get subsumed because you're busy in the bigger picture. Like, no, this is how we keep everything running. I got to prioritize this right now. I promise I will I mean, this is cat's cradle, right? Like this has been a problem in human life and human storytelling
Yes.
forever. That's a Cat Stevens reference for you children in the crowd.
Oh, I thought you were going with Kurt Vonnegut, Cat's
I mean, I
Cradle.
will always reference Kurt Vonnegut, but
Okay.
this song "Cat's Cradle" is about a father who doesn't have time.
Got it. Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon. I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what it was like to be a latchkey kid, so I definitely understood, empathized with Wim and Wendell for those reasons. I want to talk about Easter eggs. This show is really jam-packed with Star Wars Easter eggs and like allusions to a lot of other popular culture. We kind of did this on Skywalking Through Neverland too, but I want to hear a couple of your favorites from the show, Holly. What stuck out to you among the little references here and there?
I mean, aside from that, there is a beer frau sign, which
Yeah.
really is very, very much dear to my heart. The Life Day acrobats. Oh,
Yeah.
I am one of those weirdos that genuinely loves the Life Day special. I love the Star Wars Holiday
Yeah.
special. I know it's weird and draggy at points, but I love, love, love it. It was fun that teak showed up, or the teak species, in a way that was not like ta-da. It
Yeah.
was just like part of business going on.
Yep.
He's a wee ferryman, which that's just a cute turn of phrase
Yes.
anyway. I very much love the nods to Captain EO.
Mhm.
Um, some of my friends and I have been joking about whether or not um, Hooter would be related to Neil, because who doesn't want that? It does
Right.
his father looks much more muscular and tusky than Hooter. Um, did I screen cap on that, like zoom in, like enhance, computer enhance? I want to see Neil's family. Those are my big. Life Day was the big one. The one thing too that I had also mentioned on Full of Sith is that in terms of referential visuals,
Mhm.
the lighting in this is so Amblin Entertainment, right? It is
Yes.
very Spielbergian. It's always kind of golden hour on At-Aten. Every shot of the kids as a group when they're there on their planet has this beautiful lighting to it. Like the idyllicness of that place is represented in how it's lit. Similarly, or in reverse is what happens when they're with all the pirates, when everything feels
Yeah.
a little darker and grittier. Um, those kind of references I think are a little more subtle,
Yes.
but they're also like your heart knows you're seeing it if your brain isn't calculating it.
I showed the first episode of Skeleton Crew to my mom, and I feel like she has always had this instinct about filmmaking, even though she doesn't have like maybe the depth of knowledge or vocabulary to express it. And when she saw the scene where they open up the hatch and they first like peering into what Wim thinks is a Jedi temple, but turns out to be the spaceship Onyx Cinder with the flashlights, she turned to me and she said, "This feels like so many movies that you watched when you were a kid." And I was like, "You get it." Like
Yeah,
she hasn't read any of the interviews with John Watts and Chris Ford talking
right.
about how those were all influences on the show, but she understood, like she just knew the language of it. Like you say, they're basically quoting the look of the show in that way. I said this on Skywalking Through Neverland, but other than the holiday special Easter egg, my absolute favorite moment as far as Easter eggs go is the very obvious nod to the audio of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride
Oh
at
yeah.
Disneyland. When they first get to the brig on Port Borgo, you can hear the whistling from the attraction where the pirates are whistling for the dog with the key,
Yeah.
holding the key. You hear the
There are a few audio cues like that. When the kids pull
yeah,
up at school, the sound that their bus makes as the doors open is the Star Tours doors opening. It's doo doo doo
nice.
doo.
I did not pick up on that, but that's
Mhm.
great. Yeah, that's wonderful. And of course, the bus driver is an RX series from Star Tours.
Yes.
Pretty cool, pretty fun. Any other highlights that you want to talk about? We didn't really go through the plot of this show, but you'll get that when you watch it. But any other moments that stood out to you or highlights that you want to mention before we move along here, Holly?
The thing that I really, really loved, and we did talk about this on Full of Sith as well, is how much of this show in the opening refers directly back to A New Hope.
Yes.
Like some of the
All
shots
the
are almost
holding the guns, waiting
identical.
for them to come through the door.
I
The
want
pan
to
down at the
bug
beginning. Yeah.
I want to bug David Collins and ask him, because even the sound of the footsteps as people on the cargo ship are running and getting ready to like be in position as the pirates are boarding
Yes.
sound like the footships on the Tantive 4 when Vader
Okay.
is coming on. And I'm like, I wonder if they got to mix in any of those, or if they had to recreate them. I'm very curious. But there are so many of those that then get just tweaked and flipped a little bit. So it's familiar, but also very fresh and surprising, which is just a really brilliant way to tell a story like this.
And then Captain Silva also has that line where he says, like, if this is a
Yeah.
Republic ship, why is the hold magnetically sealed? Which is basically Vader saying, if this is a counselor ship, where is the ambassador?
Yes, 100%.
So I think they're definitely intentionally quoting that scene or paraphrasing, I guess. Anything that you did not care for in Skeleton Crew, to kind of flip it around? Was there anything that stuck out to you that you would like to have seen done differently in this series so
Boy, I
far?
can't think of anything. I can't think of
I
anything
can't,
that made me go like,
yeah,
"Ah."
me neither. I'm pretty gung ho on this show. I made it
Yeah.
clear on the other show, but like, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, my wish list of things that didn't happen are not real, right? It's like, I would like for you to stop on every costume for about 5 minutes so I can take it. That's not really anything I actually want to happen in a show. I just
Right.
want to see it. So, yeah, I don't have I have no complaints thus far.
I
Please
don't
keep
think
it
I do
coming.
either. Usually I have little moments where I'm like, I got to nitpick this, but e- I will say we had a moment when we were watching last night where my wife pointed out, oh, there's all these roots growing into the ship. Wouldn't it stop being airtight at that point and be unable to fly into space? And I'm like, what are you, Neil deGrasse Tyson? Like,
Unless unless those roots are from plants that were already on the
that could
ship.
very well be, but that's like we can't really apply. She admitted to this afterwards. She said, like, you can't really apply real world science to Star Wars. I don't think it really
Doesn't
carries over
track. No.
in that way. So yeah, I am pretty on board. I'm kind of in love with Skeleton Crew. It has been all I've been thinking about for the past week or so. I'm sure you feel the same way,
Yeah.
Holly. So highly recommend if you haven't watched it yet. Let's talk about the remaining 6 episodes. We have 8 total. They will come out 1 per week from now on, I believe on Tuesday evenings. Anything that you're hoping for or expecting from the remainder of Skeleton Crew?
I mean, I have some theories about what's going down that I don't want to reference quite yet. I
Okay.
want to see I want to see a lot more about Atten.
Yeah.
We'll see if we get that or not. Um I just want him. I want a really good bar scene. That's my wish list always
Okay.
for every show. I want there to be at least one really good bar scene.
Okay. There's a moment in episode 2 where the pirate Brutus, the Wolfman Shistavanen guy, says they're going to put out a bounty on
Yeah.
is that episode 2? I hope so, because I've also seen 3 and sometimes I've swapped them around. But anyway, that might be a spoiler for episode 3. Anyway, I really want to see some of our familiar Star Wars bounty hunters show up in this show. I keep
That would
asking
be
for
very
it. I
fun.
thought it would happen in Book of Boba Fett, where we would get like some of the other bounty hunters from the Empire Strikes Back. The Bosks, the Dengars, the Forloms, the Zuckuses. Would love to see them pop up. That would be wonderful. Either way, I'm really excited to check out the rest of this series as it unfolds over the next month and change. That's going to wrap up our discussion of Star Wars Skeleton Crew for this week. Let's get into our final segment for Who's the Bossk, which is called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is sort of a classic film that I went back and watched for the very first time because I've been kind of browsing through the IMDb top 250, and I'm like, which of these movies have I never seen? And I went and watched a 1961 movie called Judgment at Nuremberg. It was directed by
Oh yeah.
Stanley Kramer. And this is a historically inspired movie. It's not the same names, and it's not the same people as actually took part in this real life event, but it basically, again, like kind of a paraphrasing of what really happened in the real world after World War II. And they had these trials for this one was actually about the judges who were working for the judicial system in Germany during the Third Reich, basically. Interestingly, this movie was directed by Stanley Kramer, who to me was the director of It's a Mad Mad World, the comedy. Could not be more of a polar opposite film than Judgment at Nuremberg. But I really like this movie, and you can watch it for free, as I did on Tubi. And I found it to be still very, very relevant to today's like political climate. I will say that much. So go and check that out if you are interested in a historical drama like that. Judgment at Nuremberg. It stars Spencer Tracy, and there's all these cameos. It's kind of like I don't know. It's got cameo after, like, Judy Garland is in this movie, pops up for like 5-10 minutes, and Marlena Dietrich and all these famous actors from that period. That's my choice for this week. Holly, is there anything that you've been watching or reading or playing lately that you'd like to talk about outside of Star Wars?
This is going to be a weird one, but also
Okay.
not, because I keep saying bar. The Savoy Cocktail Book, which is a cocktail book from 1930, that was written by Harry Craddock, who is one of the famous names in bartending history. But it's basically like from the Savoy Hotel in London. It's the cocktails that they had on their list, and it's hundreds. And it's one of those things, because I make cocktails for Criminalia, and I'm always trying to think of things. Once it's good inspiration, but as I was saying today when I was talking to my coworker, my co-host on that show, Maria Tremarchi, it's great because you'll go through it, and some of the drinks are just objectively terrible. And so I'm like, this is one of the godfathers of like cocktail culture, and yet some of his drinks are just absolute garbage. So it makes me feel more confident, because I now have a cocktail book in the world, which is thrilling and terrifying. And I worry that everybody will be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and I'll be like, read a Savoy book, man. He didn't either. He put whiskey and cream together and called it a drink. No.
That's awesome. Did you say you have a cocktail book that you've written?
I do. Criminalia has a cocktail book called Killer Cocktails.
Great.
Came out in October. It makes a great holiday gift if you know people that like true crime, history, and drinking, or not drinking, because every cocktail comes with a correlated mocktail. And it's like 83 small stories of historical crime and drinks that match them. So
that sounds like a perfect holiday gift. Yeah, if you're out there and you're into that kind of thing, please go and buy. What was the title of the book again?
Killer Cocktails.
Killer Cocktails by Holly Frey. Thank you, Holly, for coming back on the show. I really appreciate every time you have been on. I love talking with you about Star Wars. Where can people find you if you want them to find you out on the internet?
I am on Instagram as Surly Girly 5, and I am on Blue Sky as Holly Frey. You can listen to Stuff You Missed in History Class, or Criminalia, or Full of Sith, wherever you listen to podcasts. And I think that covers all the bases.
Fantastic. As always, my name is Mike Celestino. You can find me at laughingplace.com. Thank you so much out there for listening, or if you're watching live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel, appreciate that very much as well. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. And I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. On the next episode of Who's the Bossk, we will be talking about Skeleton Crew episode 3 with Patrick, who's been chatting us up in the comments there. So stay tuned for that next week. Otherwise, thanks so much out there. May the force be with you, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.